Hey Miraculous fans, Crystal here, and today I have just watched Sublimation, and I enjoyed this a bit more than I thought I would. I have some complaints though, some little complaints that seemed a bit stupid of the characters, some moments of like, come on, I thought she was smarter than that, but there were also some great things that I enjoyed, and I can tell what they were going for, and I liked it. So, starting off, one of the things that a lot of fans complained about when this episode first leaked, starting with the first scene, is people were like, okay, why is Marinette regressing sort of back into those stalkerish tendencies with the whole spying on Adrian running and then following Sublime everywhere? And yeah, I kind of see people's point where it's like, okay, she seems like she's regressing. We thought she'd moved on from this and maybe not so much. But that is not my main complaint about Marinette's character here. My main complaint is that I would have thought she would not be dumb enough to pretend to be akumatized. Like, being akumatized is a serious thing. First, she pretends to be akumatized, then she transforms into Ladybug to look for her akumatized self to make it believable. And in doing so, oh my god, I'm skipping ahead to later, but the moment when Sublime fell when her prostheses broke is just, look, even I don't use any sort of medical equipment, but even I like felt that like as it broke, I was like, ouch, because those things are expensive. Like, they even said, months of preparation and probably money a lot of money would have gone into those. I don't know firsthand anything about, you know, prosthetics and things like that, but like that's big to break something like that. Like, I do like it's not just brushed off though. Okay. One important, I guess, the moral of this episode is I think they're going for a moral of accountability because at first, like, while they were fighting the Akuma and all that, and Cat Noir asks what's going on, and she keeps saying, it was an accident, it was an accident. Which reminds me of something I've seen in a post somewhere where someone said, you know, it's not accountability if you say it was an accident. Like, let's say you break something. The post was like, accountability is not saying it was a mistake. Accountability is saying, yes, I broke the thing. And that's what she needed to do in the end. I'm not saying that's what she needed to do to defeat the villain, because even if she admitted it, that doesn't necessarily mean she would have rejected the Akuma. No, I'm saying that's what she needed to do in order to do the right thing. And we had a lot of moments where she stopped to think about that, like when Sublimation was saying stuff like, is that what superheroes do? They ruin my daughter's chance of getting a sponsor and all that stuff. I did like that the lucky charm, um, you know, it was a mirror to make her look back on herself. It kind of reminded me of that moment in the Shadybug special when the lucky charm was again a mirror and she held it up so Shadybug could, self-reflect. But in this instance, yeah, it was about accountability. She and I do like that she apologized both as Ladybug and then again as Marinette. I did like how she stopped and talked to them properly about it. one thing that I didn't like that really surprised me, because I was like, I didn't think that it worked like that, is that when she did throw the lucky charm and say miraculous ladybug, the prostheses were fixed. And I'm not saying I want them to be broken. Like, obviously, it'd suck if Sublime had to go without them and couldn't run because she uses running blades for proper running. But I'm saying I didn't think that the power worked like that. The way I understood it all this time was that the miraculous ladybug ability fixes damage caused by an akuma. But the prostheses were broken before Sublime's mum got akumatized at all. So you'd think that that wouldn't be included in the stuff to repair. Like, I could have sworn in previous episodes it's been said the lucky charm repairs the damage caused by the akuma. So I'm really surprised that they allowed that. I guess the writers just didn't want to leave Sublime without her running blades. Maybe they thought that would be too sad of an ending or something. I don't know. Not really sure what they were doing there, or maybe I just got the rules of that power all wrong. But then, like, what are the rules if she can just repair anything? You know? I don't know. It's really tricky, and I'm a little annoyed that the prostheses were fixed by that because that damage was not Akuma related. But that aside, there were quite a few good points of this episode. First off, disability representation, which is amazing, even to me when I don't have a physical disability like that. But I've seen people who do were pretty happy to see this character introduced, because before this point, there aren't a lot of disabilities shown in this show. There is one example, which I'll get to in a moment, but yeah, the disability representation was very interesting. And Sublime's character, it works because on one hand, she is representation of a disability, but at the same time, showing things from Marinette's perspective, Sublime is being shown as appearing to be perfect in many ways, especially when we see her following her at school. I even kind of laughed at like how ridiculous the harp scene with all the animals around her. I was like, is this character some sort of Snow White goddess kind of thing? Oh, and when the harp string broke, you know what she grabbed to fix it? A hair. I'm sorry, no, you cannot use a hair as harp string. That would not hold up. That was just getting ridiculous. But okay, I get it. That scene was just showing how Marinette sees her as perfect. And that was the build-up until we got to things like the bathroom scene, where we saw Marinette sees her as perfect, but then we see she struggles with anxiety too, just like anyone else. We saw her hands shaking, and when she was talking to her reflection in the mirror, Marinette thought she was talking to her, saying, I know you're in here and I know you're stalking me, but she was talking to her own anxiety. And I actually found her speech to be kind of powerful in the moment, I won't lie. I liked that. But the other thing I was saying, pretty much the only other example of disability representation in this show is Kagami's mother, who did make an appearance right at the end. She became the new sponsor, and I'm wondering where the show will go with that, considering we know she worked with Gabriel She knew he was monarch and all that stuff. Mrs. Tsurugi is not innocent. So I'm not sure what's going to come of her being connected to Sublime. The other thing I found interesting that this character gave us is also divorced parents representation. I found that interesting too. That's something I can relate to. And before you come at me and say, oh, we have Chloe's parents already, not exactly. Because earlier in the show, Chloe's parents seemed to be more of an on again, off again type of thing. Like Heart Hunter, I remember, they did sort of have a relationship going, or like the season 2 finale. They were acting as a couple. They were trying to make things work. They had a lot of disagreements, but they were not completely separated. So it's not quite the same as regular divorced parents. They might be separated now that Audrey is back in New York. I can't quite remember how things ended with them, but I think around the same time Chloe went to New York, I think at that point those parents just were kind of separated. But the point still stands. These parents were interesting, and the whole dynamic with their differing perspectives. Like, obviously, the focus was on her mum wanting her to be perfect, and that's not good to have all that pressure of trying to be completely perfect. On the other hand, her dad, was trying to be a bit more supportive, saying, it's okay to be afraid, and that was really nice. But I kind of see why, and her mom scolded that. Well, she scolded him just for the little things, like when he tried to carry the bag for her and things like that, which was a bit over the top. But I can see why she didn't want him to say things like it's okay to be afraid and give up, because he used the words give up. Because you don't want to be too relaxed with that. Because if you tell a kid, oh, it's okay to give up as soon as you're scared, you don't want your kid to, like, give up completely because they're a bit scared of something and then they'd never get anywhere, right? Like, pretty much anything, you could give up and you wouldn't get anywhere. So I sort of see both sides, but obviously, I'm leaning more towards the dad's side. You do need to take into account her emotions and that people can't be perfect. And that ties into the message of the episode with all that accountability with Ladybug. Even Ladybug's not perfect. She screwed up. She broke the prostheses by screwing around with soap or whatever. And yeah, that was pretty stupid. And yet, surprisingly, when she let herself get hit by the power, which was supposed to make people the perfect version of themselves, it just kind of got nullified because apparently she's already the best version of herself. I kind of disagree with that, because if she was perfect, she wouldn't have been screwing around with soap and pretending to be akumatized. But that's beside the point. Speaking of powers, it wasn't explored much, but there was a brief moment where maybe it was a last resort, a last ditch effort, where Chrysalis suddenly gave Sublimation this power where she started shooting these things that were called Antikumas, which one of them hit Cat Noir. And it was a brief moment, but he said he'd lost his powers. Which I remember a lot of fans were talking about that and saying maybe it's a good way to balance things out, because towards the end of season 5, they grew up to the point where they don't have to transform back, but also they can use their powers like Lucky Charm and Cataclysm as many times as they want. And a lot of people were saying that might get a bit too overpowered to be able to keep using it. So I remember when this episode first aired, people were talking about these Antikumas, saying, well, maybe some of the villains will use that, and then it'll be a bit more of a fair fight. But we didn't see much of that here, because it hit him, and he acknowledged he'd lost his powers. But the other problem was, I guess, Sublimation didn't quite expect that to happen. It kind of threw her off to the point where Ladybug just went for it, grabbed the metal and broke it and purified the Akuma, and that was that. So we didn't really explore that new mechanic of the Antikumas, but maybe they'll come back. But that's all I can think of to talk about with this episode. I liked it a bit more than I expected to. Some of the moments were pretty stupid. Things like some of Marinette's choices. Like, you can't just make a character stupid just so they can learn their lesson at the end. I get that the moral was about accountability, but some of the moments required to carry out that moral were a bit But overall it was fine. And there were some nice moments, like like at the beginning with Alia, and when Tiki came down, like, aren't you gonna talk her out of this? And she's like, yeah, no, she'll figure it out. And also Trix got a line, which I was gonna mention. Yeah, Trix has a great personality, so I was glad he got a nice little line, and he's happy with that. But that is all I'm gonna say about this episode. So the next episode that I'll be watching, if I'm remembering the order correctly, I think is actually Werepapas, which is definitely one that I'm interested to see. So, with that being said, I'll see you next time for more Miraculous and other things as well. See you next time, guys.